In 3, 2,
Oh, I made a face.
1. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to a FrameCast on the first day, which is really, really weird. But we're still the regular old FrameCast. We're just number 23. And we got Xayl and we got Xayl on today. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Awake.
Wow.
Awake.
That's a low
That's
bar.
way better than Tuesday.
To be fair, though, Xayl, on Tuesday morning at 5 in the morning, I got a alert that one of the servers went down. And I had to get up and actually fix the server.
Well, you a diligent little worker bee.
Well, they pay me to do it, so
Yeah, well.
you know. So basically, we were going to record Tuesday. I'm like, nah, dude, I'm fucking dead. I've had like 4 hours of sleep. I'm not doing this.
See, I could have done Tuesday way easier. So, this is all your fault, really.
Yes.
I blame you.
So now, as it's a Warframe topic, and you might be known with the Warframe community. If you're not, Warframe is a cool game. You should try it out. But if you know something about Warframe, you know something about this gentleman over here, Xayl. He talks a lot about lore, and we're going to be doing that today as well. Or rather, the way that Warframe tells its story. Because ever since the second dream, people have been praising Warframe for the rich and vast lore that's in here, in it, the interesting, captivating story, and also the way that they can very well deliver it via their cinematic quests. I mean, they probably said something else before the second dream, when it was just kind of a giant mess, but hey, after the cinematic quests, a lot of people said that it was pretty good. However, I also feel that there are some things where it falls short on. Let's say Old Blood. Let's say the way that Planes of Eidolon are introduced, where if you watch the dev streams, you're aware of what's going on. But if you don't, you just kind of have to figure it out. So, first of all, I'd like to ask both of you guys, how did you feel about the second dream when that came around? Was that a big change in Warframes, in your experience of Warframe story to you, and was it for the good or for the bad? How do you feel?
Do you want first, Zeno?
I don't know how long will you be?
Probably not that long. Like,
You go for it, then. Man.
yeah, okay. It was like, I remember watching it. Oh, not watching it. I remember. They did a trailer for it, didn't they, or something along those lines?
They announced it, but they didn't actually,
Yeah. Or,
show it off or anything like that.
no, I remember it being like, because we'd had. I don't think I was doing videos at the time, but I remember having all these like theories about what the Warframes were going to be, and like, well, not. I guess that was later on that we find out about that, but like what the Tenno are and everything, because there was all these inconsistencies with the writing, but it was big. Like it was. I remember staying up to. I think it was pretty late when it came out because delays and all that, but it was big. Like it was this huge, big change, and I think it set a lot of people's expectations pretty high because of this big twist and this big payoff for something we've been waiting for. Like, when did it come out? 2015. Yeah, so I'd been playing the game for like a year and a half at the time, and it had just been this rat in a maze simulator. There wasn't anything to it other than that. But I don't know. It was great. Do you know?
I remember when it came out. It came out around, I think it was like 11:30 at night for the UK.
Was it? Was it early?
So early.
Early. 11:30 at night.
Oh, this is in relation to like the War Within, which was like 4 a.m.
I mean, seeing over
War Within was at like 6-7 a.m. Like, because I did a huge stream afterwards, and I was like, yeah, it's like, oh, it's 6 a.m. I'm gonna go to bed now. And then Loz literally calls me as I've climbed into bed. It's like, this just dropped. I'm like, son of a bitch. So I literally get back up, and then I just like record it.
But I don't know whether it was the War Within or whether it was Planes. Maybe it could have even been, no, not Fortuna. Planes or the War Within, where they said that they could like release since like noon European time, and then it didn't release until like 2 or 3 a.m. And people had just been streaming for over 12 hours waiting for it to come out. They're pretty bad about their release times. But yeah, go on, Drew. Sorry.
So when I stayed up to play. Oh no! I wasn't planning on staying up to play the second dream. It just dropped, and I thought, you know what, this is gonna be like 30 minutes worth of content. I'll just play it, and then I'll go to work in the morning a little bit tired, and then we played it. We finished it about 1 a.m. Both Lars and I stayed up to do this. And then we were so hyped, we stayed up till like 3 in the morning, just playing
Damn.
the game, just chilling and like bantering and things like this. I think that the whole thing that really sold it for us was the fact that there were these custom animations that involved your Warframe,
Mhm.
right? So there's so much storytelling out there by like Hideo Kojima with Metal Gear Solid, where certain scenes actually have Snake wearing the clothing that you assign him, they're primarily in Snake Eater, right?
Mhm.
But then there were other scenes that were too complicated for that, and they had to actually record it properly. So all of a sudden, Snake's clothes have just changed, and it was just like it's kind of immersion breaking.
broken.
Yeah, exactly. But the fact that your Warframe, the one that you customized, you fashion framed the F out of, is now involved in the narrative. It just felt so amazing, right? Also, it wasn't some janky ass oh look, high quality cinematic, or I do notice the difference between the rendered videos in Destiny and then the in-game videos in Destiny, and it is a bit disjointed, but at the same time it's not as bad as some others.
It's sort of where we're going potentially though with like the new player experience, because that's all pretty and shiny and looks very different.
Yeah, the big trailer. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Like the trailer is. Whenever I looked at that trailer, I was like, I think they didn't announce yet that it was going to be part of like the new player experience. For those of you unaware, last TennoCon Warframes conference, they showed off a new amazing trailer that was made by a bunch of really good people that were really good at making trailers, and then they showed this thing off, and then afterwards they said, "Oh, this is going to be a new player thing," and I was like, "Well, that looks beautiful, but that doesn't really reflect the game in game at all." So, like as a video, I think it's beautiful, but for this game, I don't care. It's like this is not exactly the game, so it's like, yeah, it's beautiful, but it's not the game.
It was a bit
disjointed.
I feel like you're right. It's like missells the game because it's all like Plains of Eidolon. Look at all this. It's all this is where you're going to spend the game. You're going to use all these powers and jump around and do this stuff. It's like, yes, to an extent, but I feel like we get further and further away from what the game is, from how they're trying to sell it. That's not really what we're talking about here. But
no. So for me, the second dream was the very first time that Warframe actually got its act together and started telling a story. It always began with like this interesting narrative, with this interesting idea of like ninjas play free, and was like, okay, we're these cool different like Warframes that we play, and it's like, okay, what kind of story could be behind that? But it was mostly like, figure it out yourself. Whatever you like, that's what it is. And then they had some quests, which are like once every while, like Warframes came out with quests, and then was like, okay, there's some story here, and then there's some random story in this quest, and there's some random story in that quest. They didn't really feel like joined together. And then I think it was the spy quest and then the Ta that kind of like started to feel like, okay, there's something going on in this universe, and then the Ta rolled into the second dream, and the second dream was like, boom, now we have a story here. So honestly, I didn't really play that well because I had a computer that would crash every time I jumped into the Arcwing mission, and it would overheat every 30 minutes. But it was quite a shock to see like what this game was, and I think that they did that story very well. Given the other two cinematic quests, do you think that those have done as good, better, or worse than the second dream?
Define done as. I mean, are you talking about made or are you talking about received?
Well, the way that you received it, in your opinion, do you feel that they kept up the trend of the way that they told their story in the second dream? Did they keep it up with the War Within, the Sacrifice, or did it get better? Did it get worse? Or how did you experience those in comparison to the second dream?
I suppose that means I don't know whether or not you're talking about the like the quality of the quest, because I think they got better, and it was definitely gameplay wise, it was definitely more interesting as
Mhm.
you went through the War Within, and we had all the operator stuff. As much as like even now, I'm embarrassed at how long it took me to realize that there was like the how you kill the Kuva Guardians. That was just
Oh my
oh,
god.
I've got a let's play of that somewhere, and it's horrifying. It's just like, how did it work? Or like going over the bones and trying to not get eaten by the maw.
I share your
I don't know if the
shame. I have
storytelling.
the exact same.
I don't know if the storytelling got better. Personally, I think people don't like the War Within, but I like War Within probably just as much as the Second Dream. Where it goes downhill for me is the sacrifice, and it goes back to what Zeno was saying before about having your Warframe being part of the story. And it was just it always felt like Umbra was just fucking just ram it in there, just make sure it's part of the story so it's relevant, so we have a reason to give it to everybody. But I don't know, not
Drew?
a fan of that one.
To me, I feel that the War Within is the best one out of the three, mostly because it was more involved with the cinematic side of things. Obviously, the Second Dream was sort of a tester. It was an MVP. This is a term I always bloody use to see whether or not people liked this sort of content, and obviously people did. So they went full ham on the War Within, and it was great. You know, it sort of developed your operator, it developed your Warframe, it gave you more about the world, gave you more about how the Grineer. It told you a lot, right? Even the history that was hidden from you. I dislike the sacrifice because there was no sacrifice for you. It was, if anything, it was a glorified murder, you know, or enslavement or something along these lines. The narrative was all right. I did feel like it was a giant, for lack of better term, cock tease at the end, where it was just like, and now we're gone. Like, but Lotus, but Nata, but what, but why, what? And you know, she just buggers off, and you left there.
Yeah, it was a bit. I guess because they wanted to, that was supposed to be like the end of the trilogy or whatever. To set up like the next one is a bit of a cheap move, I think. But maybe consider this as part of this saga, and then the quest that comes after that maybe will be sort of to do with other things that we've recently learned about.
Well, I've always had ever since I saw that I had difficulty with that final end thing of like the Lotus skipping off because before the sacrifice, like half a year before that, they kind of teased it up with the the apostasy prologue or something, which was when we had the War Within. Like no, the Second Dream had the Nata as a prologue. And I don't think the War Within had necessarily a prologue, but then we had the sacrifice. But then the sacrifice was coming up, and then around Christmas we got the apostasy prologue, and we're like, okay, so this is where the sacrifice will go, and it was all about the Lotus. It was like, okay, interesting storyline. Maybe the sacrifice is coming up in a couple of weeks. Well, that turned out to be months, and then it starts off with the exact same props from the apostasy prologue, and then it's like, oh, this first scene, and we're never going to see this again until the end. And it's like, yeah, no. This is not what you teased me. This is not what you introduced me to. This is just something different. It was pretty much, it felt like a bait and switch.
It's almost like Dee's writing's really inconsistent, and they kind of just sort of go by the seat of their pants. But
I kind of feel that it's not so much the seat of the pants, it's more a case of what the community demands. Like, sometimes I wonder whether or not they listen to fan theories. Well, a part of me doesn't think this because I've spoken to Steve in the past, and he has he's got this huge idea in his head. But it feels like sometimes that he listens to fan theories, or anyone listens to fucking fan theories, and it's just like, yep, I like that idea. That's a good idea. Gonna go for that.
So, what would be examples of that, which you can see in the quests?
Well, like I fucking called it. I said that we were characters that were remote controlling the Warframes because we could swap in and out the whole Ghost in the Shell vibe and the whole, Warframes are people vibe. Again, I guessed that as well.
I mean,
As soon as Steve said Evangelion, I think a lot of people
Yeah.
realized that because it was, it's basically a straight rip.
I personally feel that when you're talking about Warframe uptaking a lot of the fan theories and integrating that into its story, maybe to the detriment of the quality of the story, would be an example of the sacrifice, where it's a popular held belief, which I kind of support as well, that Umbra was maybe forced in instead of another character like the Stalker, or instead of an entirely different story, which would have much better fitted in the coming of age story of the operator, where in the first one we figure out that we're the operator, in the second one we build each other out. Well, we build ourselves out. So it's like the second dream we awake, then we learn about ourselves, and then the third one we have to choose to move on, to become independent from like whoever the Lotus or whoever in that story would have been in. But instead, because I feel the community had demanded Umbra to be in the game, which I don't think was ever intended necessarily to be in the game, but it happened to be demanded because China Warframe came up and they needed to have an Excalibur Prime, and oh, here we go, Excalibur Umbra for Founders Access, and then people were like, oh no, we want to have that. And then for years and years this went on, and then Umbra became the sacrifice part, main character of the sacrifice. I think that's, to me, a very clear example of the community interfering to the detriment of the storytelling. Do you agree or not?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily community interfering as much as like that's the situation where Dee and Steve should be saying like, no, we're doing it my way. This is our story, not like like okay. I guess I don't know. I can't. I mean, I'm a founder, but I can't remember like there was no like legal agreement or anything. It's just sort of like a spoken thing. It was just in an email being like, but the agreement for like moving, giving Excalibur Prime to anybody else.
No, it is. It is in the.
It is. Okay.
It is.
I was gonna say like like you could have. Well, maybe they couldn't. Maybe they couldn't give it to China. But it would have saved so much trouble.
I mean,
at least
they could have. Basically, if you're not aware, founders, the people that paid for the game, that supported the game financially when it was in the very early days, were able to get Excalibur Prime, which was the Excalibur character, but then the Prime version. This was, as Drew says, contractually exclusive for the founders. It would never return. And then and then Warframe gets launched as a separate version in China, and they want to have their own founders access, but they can't include Excalibur Prime, so they make pretty much the same kind of character and then call that Excalibur Umbra. And then the international community comes around and says, like, we want that. I think that at that point they should have said no.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I remember that how long it took for them to actually bring Umbra to the game. It felt like ages. Just every stream, you'd see somebody where like, "Where's Umbra? Is Umbra here yet? Have we got Umbra yet? Is this happening? Are we getting Umbra? Are we getting like every single dev stream?" And it didn't matter what the topic was, but we had multiple updates between when he was first announced as part of like the China frame thing and when he was finally fucking released, like years later. I think it was something like 2 years, but. Yeah, I think Steve should have just sort of grown a backbone and said no. Or, well, I understand like the need for like a gameplay stronger Excalibur. So I guess from that perspective, it's fine. But story-wise, I think it was a disaster to stick him in there. It should have just been like a Prime Access or something, or like you could earn him in game, like you would any other Prime.
Yeah. So, apart from the community, maybe being the detriment to the story, I don't think that necessarily Umbra being in there, we don't know what else it would have been if Umbra wasn't in there. But regardless, I also think that for me, what I feel made quests, quests with the exception of a couple like Chains of Hero, but something like the Sacrifice worse than the War Within, was that I feel Warframe, when they started out, they were very much working on a very short-term schedule. They were like, we got something new, let's push it out. Like, they didn't know how long they were going to be around, so that's why you would get quests which aren't very much planned in advance, which are just like, hey, we have a new Warframe, let's make a quest for it, and the more time that they get, the more this game grows, the more they can invest in bringing us a better story. And I think that when we got to the second dream, or Nata actually, because it started with Nata, they actually had this like mid to long term idea of like, okay, we can comfortably make a cinematic quest and we can plan it a little bit in advance. And then they did that with the second dream, and then they did that with A War Within. But what I feel they're doing now is, it feels to me that they're planning way too far ahead with the story beats, where it's like the fact that everything that was being mentioned like half a year before, the introduction to the sacrifice, was all about the Lotus and Nata, and then we just get like one story beat and then like another at the end of it, and then you're just sitting there like, okay, this is going to take another 1.5 years before we even like see this thing continue. When you're watching that just feels like, yeah, it feels, it doesn't feel as fulfilling as having a story.
Well,
go ahead.
I think one of the problems here is the fact that, in all honesty, a lot of the player base does not care for a narrative, right?
Mhm.
I know loads of people that, play games like World of Warcraft, and they don't care about the text of the quest or anything like that. They skip all that and they just go do the quest, and all they care about is the leveling mechanic. I introduced a new person to Warframe the other week, and he tried to skip the beginning introduction to Vor's Prize, right? Immediately. He's like, oh, just skip this. Oh, skip this. I knew someone else, and I brought this up recently in 10 o'clock. A friend of Loz's that was playing Diablo 3 with him for the first time, this person's experience, first time, he skipped every bit of dialogue. He just kept on closing it. He just kept on skipping. He then got to the point, which was the end of Act 3, got really confused and just went, oh, this plot makes no sense. It's so stupid. And like, well, if you didn't skip the whole of the plot, then you would know what the fuck was going on. I mean, I've watched Twitch streamers playing World of Warcraft, then like going, oh, this plot's so stupid. It's like, how can you comment on this? You are literally skipping the entirety of the quest scenes. Like, how can you say this? It makes no sense.
Diablo's a bad example for this because I think they do the story. You are delivered the story as it goes along, and you do get like it's pretty linear. Diablo 3 is definitely very linear. I don't know.
Yeah.
4 might turn out to be completely different, but I feel like it's partly on the developer to deliver the story in an accessible fashion. Because Warframe, Vor's Prize, I don't think I ever actually got to play it because I skipped it because when I started, it wasn't in the game, or at least because I think it was marketed as like a tutorial mission, and I was like, oh, I've been playing this game for like a year now, I don't need it. And then it's still frosted glass in my codex. It's really annoying, and I really want to do it, but never mind.
You can repeat it, can't you?
No, you can't. If you haven't done it before, you can't repeat them.
If you haven't done it before, you can't repeat it.
No, I can screenshot it for you and everything if you like, unless they've changed it recently. Like,
so if you have done it, you can repeat it.
I've no idea. As far as I know, you can't.
I'm sure you can.
But I can't personally. I can't play it because it's just frosted over like any other quest you wouldn't have unlocked.
I must. Anyone in chat that's reading this, like, or listening to this, like, tell me if I'm right or wrong. Like, can you actually repeat Force Price? Because
I'm sure you can. Me personally, I can't play it because I haven't played it before. It's not an option to like start it later on, but hopefully that'll change with like the new player experience and all that. But who freaking knows? It's not important. But every time a new big quest comes out, I'm always like, wait, do I need to have played this? I remember when the sacrifice came out and it was like part of the criteria. It was like, you have to have played this, and this. And one of them was Vor's Prize. And I was like, oh God. It's not gonna let me in and I won't be able to get my video out. God damn it.
It seems like there's someone else here in chat that has skipped the tutorial because, like, 2 years after 2 years after Warframe came out, they brought up Force Prize as this new kind of quest, and then you could choose to do it if you were already like partway in the game. And they say that I literally cannot play Force Prize, And Nasami also says that it's a quest which can't be repeated. Like a lot of quests in Warframe just can't be repeated. So, yeah.
In all honesty, I think the rest of my point is the fact that because there are so many players out there that typically don't care about the plot,
Mhm.
it's not a focal point to driving game development. So many people play for the gameplay experience. They couldn't give two
And the
shits
open
about.
worlds, yeah,
Yeah,
more
yeah,
open world zones.
Yeah, and it's often why games like Grand Theft Auto typically have such a dry narrative. Grand Theft Auto 4 is the only Grand Theft Auto I have seen to completion. The rest of them I got bored. Right?
Mhm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with an open world game having a story. I'm not. That's not what I'm shitting on here. It's more the fact that we've like we were saying before, how long there is between each sort of cinematic quest and each piece of
Yeah.
narrative is partly down to the fact that D has other stuff they want to do and they don't have the manpower to spend to send this team off to do this quest for just
Mhm.
however many months, and that comes out at a set date and it's going to be there because they'll bumble about with Fortuna and then they'll do this and then now we're
But
getting Empyrean.
I genuinely think, though, they have put in a lot of resources for many months to actually make the new war, right? I don't think this is something that, it's October, ready to get started. I think Empyrean's more along that, but I don't think New Wars. I think they've spent a
Yeah,
lot
but
of
because
time.
I feel like when the Second Dream and the War Within, and maybe to an extent the Sacrifice, I feel like the Sacrifice started to see the other stuff creeping in and delaying it.
Yeah.
But I feel like with the Second Dream and the War Within, it was all hands on deck for those quests. Like they got them done, and I cannot remember how long it was between Second Dream and the War Within. I think it was about a
Year and a half.
Year and a half.
Yeah.
Okay, so it must have been.
Oh,
No,
sorry,
no.
sorry,
11
sorry,
months.
sorry,
It was 11
sorry.
months
11
because
months. Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
and between the War Within and the Sacrifice was a year and a half.
That's what I heard. Sorry, my bad. I got the. I
No,
heard the wrong
the
news.
Sacrifice was insanely delayed, but again, I think that's because of Plains of Eidolon and all the stuff
Yeah.
they wanted to do with that, and that it did so well and brought in so many players that now they focus more on these big
The open
sort of
world,
player
yeah.
draws. Like, I guess that's one thing I'm worried about with Empyrean is that it's going to, draw in a lot of players, and then a lot of people are going to be like, wait, I can't unlock this immediately. Well, bye, and then they'll. I mean, maybe that's good for the story development because it means that they'll see a negative impact to focusing on these other mechanics. But
Okay, so part of me feels that aside from this idea of which I feels like they're looking more long term than before, where the Second Dream they did leave a bit of a cliffhanger, like not necessarily even a cliffhanger. It was just like, hey, you have a few open leads which haven't been concluded yet. Where it's like, where did the Lotus come from? What's our relationship now that we've seen her face to face? Why did the Stalker not kill us? Why did he hesitate? What happened with what's going on with the sentients, which have now been introduced? But it was a story that closed off. Same with the War Within, which was also kind of a story that closed itself off. The Sacrifice actually just had this really big cliffhanger where it's like most of the time you do that because you want people to watch next week's episode. This is like, well, if you want to figure this out, hope you're still alive by the time we release this, because we don't know. But that's part of the thing which I felt with the Sacrifice. But another thing which I felt why they could do that, or why they actually, I don't know why they did that, but one of the theories that I have why they assumed they could do it is because I feel they're relying a lot of, with a lot of their game content, I feel they're relying on the outside compassion felt for the game. Now, that's a really weird statement, but I'm trying to formulate this in my head and putting it to the right words. So, what do I mean with that? What I mean is that when the Lotus is being talked about in the forums or in the Warframe stream, she's most of the time referred to Space Mom. They even gave me like Space Mom tattoos on TennoCon. It's like, oh, the Lotus is such a beloved character. Remember the 2015 guy that was like shouting things about Space Mom on like the Gamescom thing. It's like Lotus has gotten a lot of attention because she's great. Order's the same way. It's like those characters have been really amplified in the community. And I feel that they're using that as a way to, hey, the Lotus just kind of stabbed you in the back and then left you no contact for months. But hey, we all love her. We all think that she's great because you guys clearly say that, so we gotta save her. So it's implied that we have to save her. It's implied that you really care for this character. Whereas I feel that if you're looking in the storyline itself, just at the story, not at like the outside community affection for this character, I don't necessarily know whether that's warranted. And the Lotus might still be an arguable case, but for example, one of the main things in Warframe that drove me to this topic was the introduction of Xayl Sai, where Xayl Sai is introduced as a character that's really like out there and ordering you around and being like, you got to do this and you got to wait 12 hours for this and we got no time for this and you got to do this and listen to me and I'm like, well, you haven't warranted that yet. Like, I don't have any relationship with you where I should even consider listening to you, but because Xayls have been held in this high regard and Xayl Sai has been hyped up as like, oh my god, we just saw a new Xayl at TennoCon. I feel that they imply us to, it's just like implied like, oh, you should like this character because it's a Xayl and you guys like Xayls. And I feel that that's in a lot of parts of Warframe, they're lacking the in-game narrative build-up or arcs in order for us to justify our feelings towards a character, because they're taking that justification from what the community at that time feels. And if you watch the dev streams, you should know about it.
Well, it's like, yeah, relying on community kind of as a shell around the game that like has all these attachments, these different characters. I think Sai's really flat, to be honest. Like, he's just not particularly interesting at all, and his backstory is pretty cookie cutter. But I see it with Lotus, definitely. I'm not sure about some of the other characters, but do you not think it would have been weird it'd be weirder if they didn't try and tie up where Lotus was going after this? After, just because she stabbed us in the back, it's like, oh yeah, we don't care anymore. It's done.
It would make sense, and like I know that from like a gameplay perspective, from like a developer perspective, it makes more sense to keep the Lotus around as like this holographic form, because otherwise you have to record new voice lines. But if you look at the narrative, it would make no sense for a character that literally shows up and like turns her back on her and then turns her back on us and then ignores us for a long time and then takes our antagonist and then flies off with it, for us to continue to listen to that character holographic voice to guide us, and then us still having this feeling of like, oh, we should go after her and maybe save. It's like, it makes more sense. Well, like, I think an equally fair-felt argument could be made that you might be like, okay, this is a threat I gotta encounter, I gotta like build myself out for, but it's not on my priority because, yeah, like, why would I go after someone that just literally ditched me? And like, I don't think that that's been justified in the story, because it's already like, you guys like the Lotus, let's go after the Lotus. It's like, no, like, you're missing some beats in order for us to come to this conclusion, and for us to justify having to wait 2 years for you to continue this story. Like, it's not in the story interesting enough for you to leave that big ass cliffhanger there.
It's quite external, I think, the reasons for why we like want to go after Lotus, because there's always like the the speculation on like what her motivations actually were, because there's so many inconsistencies. And I know you and I have spoken about this, about like where was the reason for like Ballast doing certain things in the past, and where like why are there all these plot holes that there's just never been filled in? Is it because there is going to be a development, or is it just because DE is bad at writing? But I don't know. I agree on the point of like, we shouldn't be listening to the Lotus like answering machine thing again. It's really odd that it's still going this late, but I wonder again if it's to do with the fact that a lot of their attention's been on other stuff, and it's easier just to use the same voice lines and carry on. They just, they could have moved it over to Ordis, but it would have cost them money to do that, to get the voice actor to record more lines. Just use the Lotus again. I don't know. Maybe just like cost cutting, if anything. But who knows?
I wonder if part of the reason why it's taken so long for the new war to happen, or for the conclusion to the Apostasy prologue, because we're getting on 2 years now.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, something like that. I'm wondering if they're trying to set it up where there is actually the choice for us to bump off the Lotus. And if they do that, genuinely, my hat's off to them, because I think that would be such an incredible and powerful narrative tool, right? If you had the option to no longer have the Lotus as your handler, and instead it becomes like either, you have the choice of Teshin, Ordis, or Lotus, my hat's off to them, because they would have actually recorded 3 audio lines when only 1/3 of those are going to be heard by any one player.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
Every dev chickens out of that, though. Like, whenever there's an option for that sort of thing, it's always going to be like the one that makes it easier for them to write a continuing narrative. Because if Lotus isn't around for the next God knows how many, if she's dead after this quest, if New War comes out at Christmas, we kill her, then, but that's fine, because they can carry on doing that story, and it's like we'll just we'll replace her. There'll be Teshin and Ordis, as you say. If we have this moment where it's like, oh, do you spare the Lotus or save the Lotus? It's the same with like the Worm Queen is a good example. Is spoilers in the New War, not New War, the War Within. You can choose to kill her. You can have Teshin kill her, or you can let her get away. I really like the character, so I let her get away. Elder Queen, sorry, not Worm Queen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Worm Queen's still kicking about, but the implication is afterwards that Worm is trying to resurrect her sister, regardless of what option you picked in the quest. Yeah. So even though I let her live, the implication is that she's died of being old or something, and she's still going to come back somewhere down the line. I don't think they, I don't believe that if we do get a choice with Lotus, I don't believe there's going to be any like lasting impact either way. Either she'll die heroically or she'll die unheroically, or saved either way in some capacity. I don't know. Oh. But she'll end up swept out of the way if she's going to be swept out of the way, regardless.
So my question here is, which would feel worse? No choice at all for the Lotus to redeem herself, or for you to cast Judgment. That's it. No choice at all for you to cast Judgment, or you cast Judgment to spare her and she ends up dying anyway. Which would feel worse?
I don't really know.
I think it's dependent on the way they rated and what the outcome. Well, if they write it really well, then the outcome doesn't really matter. But if there is no choice and the result will just be like, oh, we went to the Lotus, but what happened was that she was influenced by Ballast to care about the sentience, and then we defeat it, and then like, oh, she's Space Mom again, and come back, and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, but here I'm back, and we're like, Space Mom. It's like, yeah, no. Then basically what you did is you took a flat character, and you gave her an interesting arc. And then the second that it could have become a little bit like controversial, interesting, you just slammed her back into her flat character again, and just like
that's not my proposition. Okay, fine. Let's twist this so it's more in line with what you just said. Mm-hmm. So you have the option to either, so this is options 1 and 2, right? 1, you get a choice. 2, you don't get a choice, right? And the result is that she is spared, so she continues to be our handler, right? Mm-hmm. So option 2, no choice, you just get her back. Option 1, we have choices A and B. A, you kill her, or B, you spare her, right?
Well, how is she still spared if you kill her?
Hold on.
Okay, all right.
Right. So B, okay, that's the same option as option 2. A, I don't know, you could have Teshin dive in the way and take the shot, right? It's like, it robs you of the choice, right? So is it worse having the choice but it results to nothing, or not having the choice at all?
I'd say it's worse having the choice and it not going anywhere, because I'd rather have a consistent narrative where they make decisions and they have the plot go forward in a direction. I don't care about the fucking morality system. Who cares? It doesn't mean anything.
As I said, Steve hates it, right?
Why is it in? It's so
they've abandoned it. That's why it wasn't
good.
in
the
sacrifice.
It's stupid, because all it does is it limits where the story is going to go. Like, it works in games that are finite. It works in Mass Effect because it's like you can make decisions to affect the ending of the game. In a limited story game, you can be like, this is where we're going. This is what's going to happen. The story branches off, or it does like a kind of, a tiny fork and something slightly different as a result in the ending, i.e. like Mass Effect's endings are all slightly different, like slight variations, just changed cutscenes and things.
Mm-hmm.
The difference with Warframe is it's not ending, at least probably not very soon anyway. Like there's no way you can have like a meaningful story just branch off. Like you can't have two, you're just, that's suicide. You're just trying to develop two completely separate games then.
Actually, like, yeah, let's actually touch on the difference in storytelling between like finite and near infinite games, in the sense of Warframe doesn't have a end in sight necessarily yet, so we don't know when and how it will end. I don't think Warframe does either, to the exact point of like what will the dialogue of the characters be, what will the quests be. Because what made Savlon Sai's introduction for me so weird is that I've been playing The Outer Worlds recently, which is a very narrative-driven game, but does a really great job in delivering that narrative. So it's a story of humans colonizing the galaxy, and you're on like this one ship where everyone was like cryo, sleep, frozen, and the ship was abandoned, and you're the one of the ship that gets rescued, and you're thrown into this world, and you gotta like rescue them or whatever. Like you can choose what you want to do, but every character you encounter is voiced. Every character you encounter has a storyline, a personality written out. Not every single character has arcs they can overcome, but a lot of them have arcs which you can follow them along to, even if it's just like help this guy out with doing his quests and giving him some smart, intelligent advice so that he can be better off than when you met him, or you can make him worse off than when you met him. That's your choice. It's your call. But everyone that's introduced, even like the ship's AI that's introduced, is given a personality where they got some backstory, and you can choose whether you want to like be angry at them, upset at them, whether you want to be friendly with them. There are reasons as to why you would be or why you're not. And then I go from that into Warframe, and you're introduced to Savlon Sai, which just wakes up and is like, online, my crew, Tenno, you will do. Install me at the dry dock. And it's like, okay. And then from that moment on, he does babble about like this past experience, but it feels so, to me, it doesn't come across as very compelling. It's just like, oh, so we're supposed to believe this now, we're supposed to be hyped about this. It doesn't feel
there's no
warranted.
context for it, is there? I don't know if you get something in the mail. I think it's like, if there is something that you get in the mail, it's Ordis just being like, you can build a dry dock now, and then you somehow research Sai, and then suddenly he wakes up and he's like, well, it's time to go. Let's do all these things. Go and defend this bits of ship like 5 times over, and throw all your resources into it.
The mail thing, it infuriates me to no end.
It's not context. Like
no.
What?
It's the worst part of it is the fact that, oh, we had all this data before, and it was corrupted, but I never thought to actually change this one bit in the entirety of the bloody binary that we had. No, I couldn't bother to do that. That's not a part of forensic computer science in the slightest. It's not something we do every fucking day when we're trying to recover data. No, not at all. It is just a case of like, oh, there he is.
It's actually like that's one of my most infuriating things when it comes to like the way that introductions to things are being justified. It's just like, there is an update, there is a thing. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but should it just being an update justify that something is there in order for a story in the game to still be good? Because I personally feel that like this, oh, there was this, like what Drew was saying, this one bit we never thought to check. It's like, that makes no sense. And it's like, when we looked at the Plains of Eidolon, when that was introduced, there was no introduction. It was like, boom, the note was suddenly there. And it's like, I feel, to me, I take big issue with this, because I think it's lazy, not even lazy writing, it's just like missing out on a part of the writing where like you could have very easily done with the Plains of Eidolon, where it was like, oh, we're sent on one single mission where it's like, oh, you got to go and do this mission, and oh no, Orders has a problem, and you just like crash lands into cities. Oh god, what is this? There it is. You can pick up right from there. It's like that's not a lot to do, but you could have done it, but you chose not to. And it's like I think
Sire's Vigil instead to shoehorn Gara in, didn't we? Again,
Yeah.
like it's about like just shoving all the gameplay elements together and making sure that it's all, you know, you've got an excuse for why you've got the frame there. Or
Yeah.
Sorry,
I
you were saying.
personally don't feel that it's just an update and the update comes out. I don't think the update justifies something being there. In order for it to be a good story.
Well, a good one for this was Cora, right?
Mhm.
Cora is just like Cora was supposed to be her own update when she just ended up on the plains, right? Just more content on the plane. But people like myself got really salty at the fact that they were just constantly pumping stuff out onto the plains. It's just like, yeah, okay, that's nice. Can we have something else to do, please?
Mhm.
And then as soon as, you know, Sanctuary Onslaught happened, oh, Cora's in the Sanctuary. Why? It was like, Cora's in the Sanctuary.
Mhm.
Doesn't answer the question. Cora's in the Sanctuary.
Because she is.
Yeah, because
Because this
duh.
happened to be the most recent gameplay element. It's like Baruch from the Orbs as well. It's just weird. It's just odd little things. Like, did you get Revenant from doing stuff on Plains of Eidolon? I cannot remember.
Yes,
Yeah.
you do.
You for
Yeah.
bounties.
Okay, so at least that's relevant. Because I could have seen that being the same thing, being like, oh, it's from arbitrations or whatever.
Well, one thing that's being mentioned here in chat is the ghoul purge, and I have a big issue with ghouls. To me, ghouls do not exist yet, and like I know that's petty, but like I'll keep it up because I personally feel that for things to exist in the game as elements, they need to be properly introduced through, like, here it is, in your face. There it is. Like, I think the Codex is an amazing system to learn more about things. Like, I think the Orders entries are deserving of a quest of their own, but I'm fine with them being there if you want to, like, dive deeper into Orders. But, like, that information that's in there has yet to be relevant within the story. So it doesn't matter that's, like, hidden away. It's just hidden away and you can find it to, like, learn more about this character, but it's not relevant. Anything that's relevant to your actual gameplay, I feel needs to be, like, shown at you. And when the girls came around, I think that was one of the blatant examples of you should have watched dev streams. It was like the very first time, the very first message
Or read the comic.
that the Lotus said was, 10-0, ghouls have popped up on the plains of Eidolon. It's like, that has no way to introduce anything. It's like, oh yeah, you got to fight the ghouls have popped up. It's like, okay, fine, cool. Why did they do that now? Like, do they do like what are ghouls? And like, I just really, really hate that. I think I think it's so lazy.
I think that there's some reflection here about games as a service as a storyboard narrative, right? In all honesty, I don't think it works well. If you look at let's unless Xayl can come up with an alternative, the one that I would direct to is World of Warcraft. Right? There are so many plot holes and just unfinished trains of thought within World of Warcraft. It is kind of criminal, right? And in all honesty, the way that they sort of soup up the narrative with Warcraft is the books, right? Some of those books are absolutely brilliant. Some of them are like questionable, but they're at least entertaining and they do give a lot of the narrative. Now, when you're saying like, you know, oh, the ghouls have appeared, like this is not a good form of introduction to who the ghouls are. I completely agree with you. But if I had a choice of forcing them to shoehorn it into the game or for them to properly do it as a book or as a comic or as a web series of stuff like that, I'd much rather that than them struggle to shoehorn it into the game. Hence, Cephalon Psi.
I mean, yes, but equally you have to present it in game somehow. Like you
Mhm.
have to make people aware of this external. Like books are, like I like the idea of them doing books. Like we'll use WoW as an example.
Mhm.
I've not read many of them. I think I've read a couple of them, but like yeah, they're cool. I think case in point, start of the last expansion, which has been an absolute mess, was a book that set the scene for the entire thing, and a lot of the motivations for some key characters that you don't really get a lot of in-game context for why they're doing things are in that book, and you don't if you're not like, if you aren't interested in reading the books and you just want to play the game but you still want to keep up with the story, you're fucked. Like you just have to deal with it. And I think
Mhm.
it's probably the same with like the Ghoul comic in Warframe. Like
Yeah.
everybody's trying to do this like, oh, we've got all these different media sources. We've got like this comic series and we're releasing this book and this web series and this little animated thing that's like relevant to it. But unless you tie it together, unless you make it like almost mandatory for people playing the game to watch through it or to read through it and have it inside the game, it's not going to be healthy for it. It's going to constantly damage the narrative because people are going to be like, sorry, what happened? It's like, oh yeah, no, you just read this like this third issue of this comic that you had no idea existed because we didn't make it clear enough.
I think you can't expect someone to do that for your story. Like, can you imagine reading a book where it's like you're into the first chapter of the book and it's like, okay, now go watch this 2 hour long movie, and then like, okay, and then continue on with chapter 2, and now go read this comic series that's been going on for a couple years, and then read on to chapter. You can't do that. If you want to tell a story, you tell a coherent, in and of itself contained story, and you can expand on that with in-game codices or lore bits or even a comic series that explores something. But you can't expect that someone that's seeing your narrative or that you're taking along for your narrative to go out of your narrative to understand what's going to happen next in your narrative.
But the thing is, like, what you're talking about is something that is entirely narrative focused, going into something else that's entirely narrative focused, going into something else that's entirely narrative focused. We are talking about something that is not narrative focused,
but it
right?
is
Going into
portraying a
something.
narrative. So
Subjectively, yeah.
yeah, it's like
Barely.
it's not narrative focused. Like, no, Warframe isn't by far, but they're still trying to tell a story. They're still telling a story within Warframe. And even if it may not be the primary focus, the fact that it is a focus for a couple of very important updates and is important to a part of the community still means that we can take a look at, like, is it the way that they're doing, is it good? And what can be improved?
The big problem here is, okay, so you want consistent, well-paced, well-introduced narratives for any of the major content. No, actually, no, not even any of the major content, including the minor content. Things like the ghouls, things like Cephalon Sai's introduction. God
Yeah,
awful.
I think I think that if you're trying to do something, you should do it right, in a sense of
Well,
okay. So like, let me give you an example to explain what I mean. Is like, if is Warframe melee focused or gun focused? Like, what is the main focus of Warframe? Is it using your abilities? It's like, well, you could argue that maybe it's melee focused. Like, melee is the primary focus of the game. That is not an excuse to say like, hey, we also want to have gunplay in this, to then like not do a fully functioning gunplay and like be like, oh yeah, we'll just skip out on this. No one cares about this. It's like,
right.
no, if you want to attempt
I
to do
get where
it,
you're
you need to
coming
do
from.
it.
No, I get where you're coming from, right? They announced the new war a year and a half ago, right? They have been, in theory, working on new war for a year and a half, right? We cannot be precise in how long they've been working on it. So if we want Empyrean, how much time is it going to add on to do something that is going to be experienced once and for a fleeting moment?
You mean for Empyrean, if you want to also add a story to Empyrean? Or do you mean just like how much time it's going to add on to Empyrean if you also want to do New War?
Empyrean is kind of a different animal because it's meant to sort of tie a lot of systems together.
But it's supposed to
here,
introduce Psi, and that's one thing we've brought up many times. It does piss poorly.
Yeah,
It does not introduce Psi well. So
Well,
how
okay.
much longer do we have to wait for them to write an introduction for Psy before we get it.
Okay,
It doesn't
so
need to be that complicated.
No.
Really.
no, really not, because like I'm not saying that every single piece of the game needs to have an hour long cinematic. As I said, for me, my biggest complaint with the Plains of Eidolon is that it didn't have any introduction at all. The way that I think it could have been fixed is just one single mission, or like one single 2-minute thing where the Lotus says, or Orda says, "Hey, we've picked up a coordinate on Earth. Let's go there." And then like, "Oh, something happened," and then boom, you're on the place. "Oh my God, what is this place? We've never seen this before." 2 minutes, and that's it, just to like tie it together. And I think that something where that's where Fortuna shined a lot more. They had a really compelling narrative to start off with, but they never finished it off. They never went anywhere. And like, I think that you can, in the case of Warframe, say it's an infinite game, so you can't really close off narratives. But I think that in the case of Fortuna, I think they would have done great if they said, okay, our narrative right here is that we have these debtors and we have Nevanya, Nevanyo, and they're in this complex situation where there's a point of conflict, and we're going to choose a side, and we can tell that story as a side arc, and we can complete that. And our goal is to complete Fortuna, or like complete at least this narrative within Fortuna within a year, and it's closed off, and there's no other leads outside of this. That's just the story. And I think that if you want to attempt to do a narrative within an infinite game, it's hard, as you say with World of Warcraft. It's really tough to do that over a long span of time. You're gonna they're ending up with a lot of loose ends, but I don't think you necessarily have to. Like, as long as you make sure that you close that, as long as you're not afraid to close things off and be like, okay, we're touching on this, we're touching on that. Because I feel that a lot of times they're like, oh, let's open up all these leads so that we have all these options, and they won't close off Fortuna or the story of Fortuna because we can't close that off because maybe we want to do something with that, or maybe people will leave Fortuna. Well, that's fine, because you can, like, people can leave Fortuna. There's an entirely other game in there. It's just a small subsection.
I've lost it now.
I don't know. I think that it would be too much for the game to expect the player base to hold on and wait for more stuff to come out. Like, we're already chomping at the bit, waiting for Empyrean, waiting for New War, right? I mean, we've had the old blood. Like, I actually tried to do some Lich missions last night. Like, I was just soloing them because no one else is doing Lich missions. Like, has the community already given up on
but they're
doing
not
Liches?
rewarding, are they? Really?
Why aren't they
You
rewarding?
get weapons. You get weapons. And that's about it at the moment.
So
you get
what's
mastery.
called? Yet people constantly whinge about having challenging content. You've got Liches.
Are they challenging, or are they, long-winded? I know we disagreed on this already about like how long it takes. I know it is easier once you're going. It's significantly easier because I've been doing Liches as well. But
I mean,
I don't see the point, really.
No. I've been on Drew's position. I'm no more in your position now, Xayl. It's like when it came out, I was really excited about this because there was a lot of new content to be played, and I thought it was really fun. But I've done 2 now, and it's like, okay, I've done 2. I've done the thing. Fine. It's like, I could go on for the weapons, but that seems like a really long grind. And I know it gets easier. Like, I'm not complaining about the long grind. It's just like, I don't care.
But that means that you don't care for the challenge.
It's not necessarily. I don't care for the time. I don't think it's a worth of time thing. It's like, I've done the challenge of like taking down the Lich. I've done that twice. I'm like, okay, yeah, I know the drill. I know how long it takes. I know I can do it. But do I want to do this now? No, not really.
Then what do you want to do? That's the ultimate question. If they put something in front of you and you're not interested in doing it, what can they put in front of you?
Well, not necessarily everything needs to be interesting. I think that a Kuvalich system like this is fine as it is, in the sense of, like, cool, If I want to explore further down the line, I can do that. I have the same thing with, like, Prime stuff. There's a lot of Prime stuff which I don't farm, but I know I can get back to it, and I can do that. There's no problem with me, maybe apart from the introduction of the Kuvaliches, but whatever. Fine. That's cool. I think that maybe it's come to a point right now where Warframe has got a lot of things going on now where it's like maybe it's too big to handle anymore. because you have so many systems and so many things and so many like left behind story points where they didn't like. If you want to go back at them, you'd be spending ages on it. But I think that it's possible in order to do something where you round these things up, where you say, okay, we deliver you a complete package. Like, as I say with Fortuna, it's like Fortuna is a small subsection of Warframe. It's like not everyone needs to like it. It's just one part of the game. And you also don't need to have it go on forever, because not everyone needs to play it forever. It needn't be played forever. Like, there are other things. Just like the Coup Village system needed to be an endless thing. Because there is much more. And like, if you're done after the Coup Village, like, I don't want to do anything but the Coup Village, I've done all of them. It's like, fine.
But the
At least
point,
they made
the
it
point,
optional now, at least.
so the point is, right, that you've done 2 liches. There's another, in theory, there is another 11 weapons that you do not have, assuming you got 2 different ones, but you don't care to get. Fine.
No.
But what are you expecting from DE to fill that time, right? If you don't want to, what you call it? Yeah, okay. So sorties. Do you do the sorties?
I've stopped doing them because I get everything that's on them. But like,
Night waves.
I've stopped doing them as well.
Right. I have a point. Right.
Okay.
If you are
I don't want
looking
them to
for-
fill the time.
Right. So what are you asking from them?
I want them to round things off and do things. Well, this will sound really presumptuous. I don't mean it that way, but I want them to do things properly, in the sense of, if you do Fortuna, like if you bring out Fortuna, round it off. Be like, hey, we have this story of like,
what does that mean?
Okay, so what that means is, in Fortuna, you're dropped into this colony of people that are massively in debt towards Navanio, and they're being harvested when they can't pay their debts. And then you get into the story of like this one boy that's being taken and is being harvested, and you go out and rescue him. And then Navanio gets wind of you, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna get you, Tenno. And then we come out and we do missions so that these people can pay off their debts, and like you grow along the ranks. Like, oh, we're doing better now. We're doing a little bit better. Oh, it's going better. And then Navanio comes in with 2 spiders, and like you fight these spiders, and then like it's just there. It's like, if you could overtake bases, like when they introduce the idea of overtaking bases, if you could overtake bases, and then like if like they would remain to be your bases. And then, like, Navanio, the troops would get more powerful, and then it would overtake them back again. And then the spider would come in, and you'd destroy the spider, and then the spider would be, like, in that map in a destroyed sense. And then you do the other one, you do like 12, and you'd have that. And then, like, at the end, you do the... I saw someone say, I'm still waiting for, like, the Navanio set to become a mecha that I can fight. Then that's the final boss battle. It's like, okay, now everyone is happy. Now it's rounded off. Boom. It's like, you have the beginning of a story. You have an end of a story. It's something that's complete. There's no loose ends anymore. You can still come back and do bounties. It's like, oh, there'll probably still be like some corpus curse like walking around, which you can do missions with. But like, you don't need to leave that an open-end thing, because it's just closed, and you can close that off. The game is big enough. And you don't need to...
You want object permanency. That's what you want. You want to have a lasting impact on the environment.
Yes, because right now we're just being thrown stories where it's like, care about this, care about that. We don't know if we're going to conclude it, but maybe we will, maybe we won't. It's like, yeah,
Right.
well, it becomes a mess.
Okay, so when you kill the Orb Mothers once, you can't kill them again.
No, you can, but it's like...
But you want object permanency.
Well, if you discover Deck 12, is it there forever?
Yes, but that's not... that
is
object permanency.
Yeah.
It's still there.
Yeah,
it hasn't gone away.
Yeah, no, it hasn't.
Narratively, that makes a lot more sense, though. Surely, if you want like a good story out of something, you have to you have to sacrifice on whether it makes sense in the gameplay. Like, it's going to have to be it's dead forever, even if you can technically redo it again to farm for stuff. It's like all the bosses. We've always had that problem with the bosses.
Well, it's like with the bosses, like, we don't necessarily have a lot of narrative around the bosses, but you can take them out, and once you take out a boss, you can advance to another planet. It's like, you do something, you can move on. It's like, fine, like, I'm totally fine that you can go back to the spiders again, you can farm them. It's just that once you take down the yellow spider, instead of in your map, the yellow spider is still sitting on, like, the thing, like, I don't know what the place is called, but the very first corporate space where everyone goes to. It's like
research
instead of it
lab.
sitting there, yeah, it's just like in a blown up state or whatever. It's like, it's just one detail change. You can always still go ahead and do it, just like you can go ahead and do Captain 4. But with Captain 4, you move on and like you move on to a next node. And here it's just like
that makes that's so disjointed. Like, oh, we're gonna go kill the thing that's dead over there, but it's already dead. No, don't worry. Time travel. Yeah. Like, it's one of the big problems with like any form of game as a service, right? You kill the thing once. You play a single player game, right? You play Nier Automata. You kill the boss. The boss is dead. The boss isn't coming back to the narrative, right? You advance the plot until you get to the end of the plot, and then the game stops. The game is over, right? But with with Warframe, yeah, I nearly said World of Warcraft. With Warframe,
see the hatred just bleeding through there.
Right? The problem is, like, this is one reason why I never, ever want to fight Nefanyo. Because object permanency, I know he is alive. Right? The problem with Alad V is we have killed him 4 times now. Wait, 3, 4?
Enough.
Enough.
For it
More
to
than
be
once.
weird.
Right? More than once. We have killed him more than once. And he is still alive somehow. Right? I genuinely thought, narratively, Sargus Ruck was dead. And like, just as you are wanting, just as you are describing, right? You kill him off on Saturn. You continue the plot, but you can go back and kill him again. But then all of a sudden, he comes out of nowhere with fucking Operation Pacifism Defect.
That makes no sense. It's like,
yeah,
okay, I am fine. I'm 100% fine with the narrative of. I mean, like, I'm kind of fine with Alec Fee, but it completely strewed around his timeline. But it still makes sense in a way. Just like Captain 4, you take down Captain 4, and then like he comes back into Void as corrupted Captain 4. It's like, makes sense. You took him down and then he comes back. Like, there's a reason why he's back. But you can still, like, after you take him down initially, you can take him down again because it's a grind game. So like that makes sense, but there's at least a reason why he's back the next time. It's like the same with Alec Fee. The first time you defeat him, he falls out the window or something, and then he gets sick. And I was like, there is a way, there's some sort of narrative structure as to like why that happens. Like, I'm fine with going back. Like, again, it's like the same with the spiders. Like, you got to defeat the spider initially, but you can go back to it afterwards. It's just like with Mario. It's like if you play Mario, you can go for the worlds and you defeat Bowser in like one castle, like, and then he moves on to the other one. You can still go back to that original one and do that same castle again, but you have to do that for the story to progress, that he went from this castle to the other one. And Warframe is just like, oh yeah, Bowser's all the way to the end castle, do furry missions, and we'll see if we're gonna ever get to Bowser. It's like, no, just completely round that up, and if we want to do that thing again, we can do that thing again. But like, they're just like, well, we don't know how big the world will be, so we're just gonna leave it here, and we might come back to it. And then you end up with like a game which has so many open narratives where it's like, where the question becomes like, do we really want to spend so much time to like round things off? It's like, yeah, maybe not now, but like, you could have prevented this. You could have just rounded the things off.
It's because the hype chases a lot, and they do all that. They have this. Steve has this mad new passionate idea, and he's like, I want to do this, and then they go and do that instead, and then they're just like, oh well, I guess we can fix this, but it's it's in the past now. We'll focus on the thing that's interesting to players now, and then they'll do that to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And it's been like since like Arcwing went in, and it was just like, yeah, and then. Never really got enough of a change. Like, they barely touch it. It's only recently they've done anything to it, and I feel like they do this, with gameplay and with narrative as well. And it's I understand why they leave these threads open, because they do want to have these options. Equally, yeah, I think there's a middle ground where you could have a story that ends sort of the Fortuna saga and still have a reason to go back. Like, it wouldn't have to be like, you could have it end in, the Solaris taking over the colony, and that part of Fortuna is theirs, or Fortuna itself is theirs, and then Neff's still kicking around and still resisting, but you've beaten him in a certain way that he's been pushed back or something, and they're having to sort of, and then like the warring territories thing can still be a thing. It's like, oh, we have to defend our territory from Nefanyo, so go out and capture this base or that base or whatever. There's nothing to stop that from happening as a result if you do like a narrative like cap on the top of it.
I mean, I
But-
think a game of Mario is very comparable to what I would like to see. It's like if you start a game of Mario, even at the very beginning, like narratively, the games aren't focused on the narrative. The narrative is really stupid most of the times. But it's like it has a start and it has an end, and you have a progression through it. And it's like once I've cleared that game, like of course it makes no sense to go back to levels which you've already done, but you still do it because the game is fun. It's like I have no problem with that game with the narrative of that game being broken because you go back to a castle and Bowser's still there, even though you've defeated him. It's like, yeah, it's a game, man. Like,
Sorry,
you go back.
Can I confirm? Are you saying about doing the boss in the same playthrough again, or are you saying playing the game from scratch again?
No, in the same playthrough.
Can you do that?
I mean, as far as I'm aware, with the Marios that I remember, like, let's just say, like, as an
You
like,
can replay levels, can you?
yeah, I think you can. If you take a look at like new Super Mario Bros. On like the Wii and like the DS, like
You can't redo the bosses. That's the one thing you can't do.
you can go
Like,
back into the castles. I can go
I've
grab
got
my
si-
DS.
I've got Super Mario. Oh, you're gonna make me fucking go get my Switch. I've got Super Mario Bros. Wii U Deluxe Edition, Super Mega Ultra, whatever for the Switch. You can't redo the bosses as soon as you've done it. Like the castle's closed, but you can continue going through the world.
If I can grab my Nintendo DS and like you can go for the nodes, and there's like one castle, one midway castle, and one final castle per world. And once you've done it, like a white flag pops out. It's like you've done it, but you can still go back and do it again.
Go get it.
I can go get it.
I demand evidence. I demand proof. Demand.
Wait, then I can't switch this thing around. That sucks.
What do you mean? No, no, just leave
no,
it. Just leave
yeah,
it, just leave
no.
it.
This is not worth
leave
it
it.
because then I can't switch the screen around. But anyway, like, I'm fine with like you gotta be able to farm the spider. That makes sense. It's like sure, and like even if it's just like, hey, now I'm walking into this world. Like I'm just walking to the open world. The only thing that's changed is now that like the spider is like broken on top of that facility instead of being whole. In my instance, it's like, okay, we changed something in the world. It's like you can still do it because it's a game. It's like fine, it's a game. No problem. Like we know it's a game, but at least advance it because otherwise, as Xayl said, we're gonna end up with Arcwing systems which are just like, yeah, this thing is still here and this thing is still here. And I think that right now what we're seeing with Warframe is that like we have like this open thing with Stoker. We have this open thing with like the Sentients, and we have Nata, and then we have Ballas, and we have the Man in the Wall, and we have like all these different things. We have Fortuna, we have Plains, it's like Ray, Ella, Fee, it's like yeah, and it's like, well, as much as I think that something like the Second Dream was amazing, I think that these things just go to show that like I don't think the storytelling is all that good as people sometimes make it out to be.
It was just because it was like a big twist in Second Dream, though. That's what I think. That's why people got that idea, and it did set the bar so high. Is because we've been playing this game for what I think Steve always says, like, oh, you have to play 40 hours at least to get to the Second Dream.
Yeah.
And at the end of the Second Dream, there's a character creator. Like, you know, that's a big thing. Like that doesn't happen in video games. You're suddenly just like, what? There's this other character that I've been playing this whole time. Big surprise. Like it's a big. You know, it's a shock if you don't know already how it's going to work. But I don't necessarily think. I think Warframe's got very unique storytelling, and like the stuff that they talk about, and the way the game has gone is interesting. It is interesting, and there is these like cool concepts, and I like the sci-fi setting, and I like that they do things a little bit different to traditional sci-fi. There's that sort of like almost Asian edge to it. However, it is always a bit of a mess. Like
I feel that the Warframe's narrative isn't the clear-cut, this is what you expect from a Western game narrative. I mean, a lot of the Western stuff is the hero gets their powers. They rise to the challenge, they fall, they get back up, and they win, right? Which is not what we've had with Warframe, right?
Do you not think? Because like
No, the fact
I would
that
think our fall was losing Lotus, and we're getting back up, and this will be, or like you could say, the sacrifice is the getting back up, where we separate ourselves from her, and then the new war will be that ultimate victory.
I don't know.
It's a bit
I mean,
mixed
like,
around because getting our powers and everything is like
we haven't had
discovering
that.
our powers
We've
well,
already had it.
yeah, the new war.
No. I'd
Not
say
new
the
war,
old war
War
is
Within, the War
when.
Within, sorry.
No, I'd say the old war is when we got our powers. We just haven't experienced it.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Right, we're
sort of-
coming in midway of the narrative,
I actually think that aside from the very first bit before the second dream, we are just a kind of coming of age story, because even though in the lore we have our powers before that and we had it in the old war, it's like the way that we experience the story, it's like you come out, you're a Warframe, and then when like the second dream begins, it's like that's the only difference. That's the only big difference. Like then you're a Tenno, and first you're useless, and then you can walk, and then you can like do your thing, do your things in the War Within, and then you experience a side story with the sacrifice, and then like the Lotus leaves you, and then you gotta grow, then you gotta become independent. So first you discover that you are, and then you grow in your abilities, and then you gotta become independent. And like that's the story which we're on from like the main cinematic lines right now.
I really don't feel this is a coming of age story.
maybe not in.
I mean, like the fact that like we were inspired to become warriors. Why? We're not. We just are. Right? We are just, metal suit clad, gun toting ninjas that just go on a murdering spree because we are hunted down, and then we are overthrowing two factions that are terrorizing the origin system.
We
to
need a
then
flashback
find
quest at this point. Really.
Oh god, we so fucking do.
Like, I
Right.
mean, saying that, considering the trailer for the cinematic opening we're getting for the new player experience, it might be, if we're lucky, maybe just because of how you see Tenno fighting Dax and Tenno fighting like old Grenier, they're all like decked out in gold
and pretty.
Yeah, pretty Grenier.
Well,
And
like
so let's see that. It's a very attractive potato.
Well, okay, so you're saying that we're warriors because we're being hunted down and stuff like that.
That's how we start, yeah.
You mean with forced praise?
Yeah. When we start the game, we are being hunted down and we are defending ourselves. We are already the hero, right? We didn't get our powers. We didn't get bitten by a radioactive spider. We didn't grow up under a yellow sun. We didn't have our parents murdered, right? We were already there. Yeah?
I mean,
we are developing as characters because our space mom left, right?
Actually, right? I agree that we're in the narrative of the Force Prize. We are just like, oh, you're already the warrior. You just need to like get in and get your ass out of here because you're hunted down. Yeah. After that, it's just like go play this because it's game. Because like there's no need to, you can't free anything. It's just like go play this because it's game. I think that once we find out we're Tenno, if you look at just the story beats, if you look at like just the narrative, it is sort of a coming of age. Apart from like until like it's weird because we have this twist very much in the middle of it, which can be very similar to like a some movies do this where you're like you first have like a really long exposition of like the hero just being fantastic and great, and then just like plummets down, and then like he has got to come back up. And here it's like we are this warrior that's just doing perfectly fine until boom, we're this Tenno that can't do anything, and then we need to like regain our powers, and then we need to become independent. It's like it kind of becomes that in the middle way.
That is one way to look at it. Certainly, I don't want to fall into an argument of no, this should be interpreted this way, because it's down to interpretation. Everyone can see things in different ways. And like, I certainly think that the War Within, that is certainly a coming of age story. Just the War Within.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're being rebellious. Don't call me kid. I'm not a kid. I'm not. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I'm getting chin hairs. I am. You know. And I certainly feel the War Within is that kind of thing. The sacrifice, that's about Umbra. That's not about us. That is a completely like it's like you're watching an Iron Man movie, and then all of a sudden there's 15 minutes in the middle about Jarvis.
Yeah, I mean more with like the becoming independent is going to be hopefully the new war because sacrifice is just filler. But like those are all the other quests that are in between this. Just feel like a lot of like, oh yeah, they're just like other things that are happening. But I see Xayl is like, oh, what's up?
No, it's just like cutting words. Like I know a lot of people do like the but
Okay.
I agree. I
Okay.
definitely agree.
I think we should talk about, because I think we're going to end up running around in circles for a while here. So
we have
let's.
already.
So
Yeah,
how do you guys
for a
feel
while
about
longer.
the second dream? How was your experience? But wait, didn't we ask that like?
Deja vu.
Yeah. No, so my question to you guys is, out of all of the characters that have been narratively introduced in the game, which would you like to see have more time spent on them? And it can be any of the characters as long as they were introduced as part of the Warframe universe. Doesn't have to be from the game.
Ooh.
Either
Sorry, you go
Stalker
first.
or Ordis, for me.
I was going to say those two are, well, one of them we know his backstory, but I feel like Ordis could stand to have a lot more kind of attention. I think a lot of characters could, just because, or at least there are lots of instances where we had Lotus telling us what to do, where it could have been Ordis, or as you say, like the introduction to the Plains of Eidolon, we could have had Ordis be the one who's handling that. I think Stalker would be. I think like I noticed in chat earlier, people were talking about this as you know, the sacrifice was apparently Umbra was switched out with Stalker, like Stalker was originally meant to be in that role, and I think that could have been a really really good way to like cap his story off, and then we wouldn't have.
Oh
had to...
god, yeah.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. You could even have had him become Umbra when he realizes what he is. Like,
oh hell yeah.
You could have had like the realization that this, like, you build the frame and you see it like sort of forming in front of you, and it turns out it's Stalker, and you're like, what the fuck? Get this out of here!
I would have tweaked it where you're building Umbra, right? But then it sort of like degrades into Stalker, right? So you're hunting it down when it's in Stalker form, and then when you purify it, it goes back into Umbral form.
Yeah, like the bit where you have that weird Zen moment in the other world where you like fuse with the frame or whatever. Like that would have been where it becomes Umbra. And I think that would have been fine. Like Stalker doesn't need to keep existing. Stalker could have stopped, and we could, they've had loads of assassins been brought into the game. Take him out, or you could leave him in. You could just have like it be again like this non-permanent thing. It's just, I guess it wouldn't make sense narratively, but we're not really arguing whether or not the game makes sense narratively. It's more like if they're actually good at telling stories.
I mean, they set up Stoker in the second dream with him having that moment of hesitation, and with him like hating who he was. It was like, okay, there's more to this, and then they never followed that up.
So to follow on from what Michelle's just said, the one character that I really want to see more narrative for, Hun Hao. What the hell happened to Hun Hao?
Well,
did he die with the sword?
Okay, hopefully we get something in the new war, because it's about, is it Era? Lotus's brother?
Eon.
Whatever the hell.
Is it?
I think it is Era. I think it's like EHRA or something.
Yeah.
It's about that. It's about the sentient mother. You would hope, considering her mention of him in Jovian Concord, that he is relevant.
Yeah.
If he's not, what the fuck, DE?
Yeah, where the fuck is Hun Hao?
But they should not have brought Hun Hao back as soon as forget the name of the quest, but whatever it was it
Natar?
Octavia's Anthem? No,
Oh
that was
yeah, no, I
Natar was
forgot. I
his
forgot
first
he was in there.
appearance. Natar was his first
Yeah.
appearance. Natar on the Second Dream should have been his inclusion in the story, and it should be something along the lines of I always refer to when I'm talking about Hun Hao's role. He's like, if you've played Mass Effect, he is Sovereign in that saga. He's the bad guy of the first game who shows up and is like, bad shits are coming, get ready, and then you kill him. But it could be the sense of the sword gets snapped and he's like, I'll be back, and then we get him in full sentient form now in the new war, as like he could have been the sentient mother, and we wouldn't have had to have this weird like extra character. Again, it's like D loves as you say, like they have so many threads that they leave just there. They could tie this off by like slimming down on the count of characters. There is Little Duck and Maru are very similar characters. Like they could have easily have had Maru fill Little Duck's role, or vice versa. But
no, just Maru, just Maru,
just Maru,
just Maru. No Little Duck.
You don't like Little Duck?
No, not at all.
I like Little Duck.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
You're lying.
I enjoyed. I did a like I've been doing like a streamless thing, and I did the disruption for Gauss, and I absolutely loved just having a different announcer. I know, I think Ordis does, or is it Alad does the disruption on Jupiter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that's where we're going, and that's why I think what's going to happen in the New War is there'll be like an end to Lotus's story. It'll probably end up in her either dead or fully on. I mean, I'd rather they didn't carry on and there's more sentient story to come. I'd rather this is like we deal with it now, or at least, you know, this is the big finish, or maybe even just the start of the big finish. I don't want to wait for another quest about the sentient, seeing as how long we've been waiting for resolution to this plot thread. But
yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I feel that the sentients aren't going to go away because we're getting that whole new tile set, right? That is going to be somewhere that we're going to be taking the fight to. I feel that the Railjack is supposed to be a expansion to the Star Child, right? We're going to start seeing new environments that we can actually go fight. I'd like to, I've always wanted a new faction to fight, right? Hopefully Deviri is supposed to be introducing a brand new faction for us.
Yeah, we've only got to wait like an entire year and a half for that as well. I think it's longer.
Yeah, it's like, people are saying, oh yeah, we're going to get a new player experience, a new player experience. That's not going to be until 2021. At the earliest, that is not until 2021. And yeah, I mean,
no, I feel that we started off this. I think the very first FrameCast was about does Warframe the dev stream overhype, and we said pretty much yeah. It's announcing a lot of things that's not following up with in a reasonable time frame. It's very much shooting ahead, and I think that that doesn't just result in people being weighty and like upset and frustrated and when is this coming out? Which we've seen over the past few years, and which you see with like Railjack that was like introduced last year, and like last year's TennoCon, we're not even seeing it here yet in full form. And Planes of Defuri and the new player experience were like, see, in all honesty, this TennoCon I didn't even bother watching it live. I didn't even care because it was like, well, most of what's going to be shown, I don't even know what is going to be out. And we are half a year later, and most of it is not, like, barely any of it is out. It's like, yeah, it's like, not only does this affect the people that are waiting, but it also affects in-game this hype chasing of, oh, let's take out these new things and let us like throw these balloons up so that people will be happy about them. Because what you're seeing is that they just leave so many systems, so many things, just like, here it is, it exists in some form, but they don't conclude it because why spend time concluding if we can let up this other balloon? And I think that if we're looking at what you were saying about can we, like, maybe they have to slim down on characters? I think that they could do with many characters. Like, I would take inspiration of long-running series, like really long-running series, like something, maybe even an anime, like a One Piece, where it's like, there's a lot of characters in that series, but they close off most of the arcs that they're doing. They close off these stories for these characters and they move away. They might come back at some point, but they close off and they move away. I think Warframe could do that as well, but then they gotta close it off. They gotta make sure they finish what they start. And I think that this is not only something which is deteriorating the anticipation and levels of hype that people have when something comes out now, because now they know that, oh, we're gonna have to wait. But I think it's also detrimental to the game in general, where it's like, because of this hype chasing approach, we're just seeing a lot of unfinished things which are just mounting up, where Warframes become this collection of things.
It's a combination of like DE's transparency being like a double-edged sword. Like, it's really nice, you know. I don't really watch as many of the dev streams now. I tend to sort of leaf through them as opposed to watching them on the day, whereas I used to be like, oh, it's a dev stream on Friday, I'll watch that. Whereas now it's like, oh yeah, that went by, I'll look at the video after the fact to see if there's anything interesting. But yeah, it's great to see them talking about it, and you know, they are fairly transparent compared to a lot of other devs. But because I think Steve being and just like the staff in general, just being very, they're passionate, but like almost struggle with like keeping attention on one thing. So the next thing gets attention, and then the next thing gets attention, and then the next thing gets attention, and whether that's story or gameplay, it's going to suffer regardless.
No,
and you know, both will cause damage to the other one. If you're not, if you're focusing on story too much, you're not focusing on the gameplay. If you're focusing on the gameplay, you're not focusing on the story. It's just.
Well, like I fully agree with what Drew said earlier about if we want to like do this narrative thing, how much longer do we have to wait for Railjack to come out? To like the amount of time that we have already waited. And it's like, I don't know whether there is like a fix to a lot of this right now at this point, because if you want to like fix up a lot, like it's going to take a lot of time. But I think that that's just a consequence of what happens when you just take on so many things, and there's so many, like when Archwing was introduced, if like Archwing is the only thing that needs to be fixed in this game, like you can spend time on Archwing, that's fine. But now we have, like, if we look at unfinished systems, we have Archwing, we have Conclave, we have Linaro, we have so many things. Which...
Oh my god, Linaro! Christ, I forgot about that. That's insane. Yeah, they like even the PvP. I was going to mention that earlier. Just the fact that there are people who like it. There's not enough people who like it to warrant being paid attention to. But I suppose that's the same point as the story. Like, not everybody's in it for the story. Oh, sorry, you were saying I interrupted.
No, it's fine. You basically finished up what I was saying. It's like...
I think there is a lot of difficulty for DE. Like, you can only hire so many people before the company starts to implode on itself. I mean, like, Xayl, you're well aware of this. How badly is Blizzard doing these days, right? They are self-destructing hard, right?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, that's just it's a consequence of being so big. You're right. Like, if you have this just monolithic company that gets like, I suppose that's the trappings of, like, you know, when everybody's like, just hire more people to do the job.
Yeah, exactly. And like, one thing I'm going to quote,
diluted vision and all that.
A quote from Blizzard earlier. Blizzard will consider the challenge of Overwatch 2's replay value. I was like, hold on, why are you considering it? Like, why aren't you focusing on it? The whole reason why Overwatch 1 died is because of the lack of replayability. Like, you know, and I feel that when a company gets too big, it gets too big for its britches, and it starts to self-destruct.
Do you not see that in DE, though? Like, I feel like, at least the last few years, they've gotten a lot more kind of...
adventurous.
Not necessarily adventurous as much as they think they know best all the time. And I'm not saying the community knows best, they're better than them in any case, but like, there are a lot of points where there's clearly something wrong with the game, and they refuse to deal with it because it's either what they wanted originally, or like I don't know, maybe I'm not going to say it's a
in some parts
thing.
Not
all over it. Like,
no. I get where you're coming from. In some parts, it's better to give than take away, right? So one of the topics that we ended up talking about in this week's 10 o'clock was about the whole It's All Blink thing, right?
Mm.
So like, oh, the cooldown is ruining the whole point of us having blink on the thing. It's like, well, the option is that they can reduce the cooldown, right? But if the blink is too much, right, they can't expand it because people will get super butthurt about it, right? They couldn't just take away blink without giving it to all the Arkwings, because you saw the uproar that what happened when Scott even proposed it on a dev stream. Everyone was angry, right? You can't take away our method of transportation, even though it's supposed to be a weapons platform. We're using that to get around, you know.
It's just
And
bitter pill for the community to swallow, I think, in some cases, and then there are other cases, a bitter pill for DE to swallow.
yeah, and so my point is that when they're constructing these platforms or features or whatever you want to call them, it's better to improve them than nerf them. Like, oh, it's Wednesday, better nerf Trinity, you know.
Well, I think that you're raising an interesting point when it comes to if companies get too big, they might implode them themselves. Like this idea of if the three of us were to start off a company, then like we all have our equal share in the company, and we're all like, okay, let's go do this. This is our dream. This is what we want to do, and we will put in all our time. And then we might get some people to help us out if it goes well. And then we might be like, they know us, like we know them directly. It's like, come on, let's go do this. And it's a very direct line. But as it grows and grows and grows, you need people to like, okay, well, you manage these people, and you manage this section, you manage that, and like you relay this, and then we got to like have this meeting to discuss how we're gonna do this and what our trajectories will be. And it's like there are so many steps that at some point it might get so big that it just implodes in itself. And I think that might be something where DE might be suffering from, or might be very wary of, that like we can't hire just more people to DE to fix this entire game and fix everything.
They're quite a small team, though, aren't they? I'm fairly certain. I don't know the numbers. How big is it?
No, it's actually quite.
I mean, relative to like larger studios, is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, no, they're small
But
compared
to like I don't know. Probably not. Blizzard isn't probably the best.
No, Blizzard is massive.
Yeah, like something like Bungie or whatever.
I don't know about Bungie, but like,
it's probably
okay,
down a bit recently, but
as a studio, they are small compared to most AAA studios, but as a indie dev studio, they are actually very large, right? But the thing is, they only have one title in the works that we know of. To be fair, they could actually be working on something else that we don't know.
They did have other titles.
They had no, they only had Amazing Eternals. The other titles were published by them.
Title then. All right,
yeah,
title, not titles. But
to be honest, it was good for them to sack off Amazing Eternals when they did, because like look how well it would have done now. So I'm not going to begrudge them that, but anyway.
So what I wanted to say is that I think that you're right that DE can't just hire more people and make the company bigger to fix things, because it has the big risk of imploding in itself. But I feel that at the same time, doesn't the game run the very real risk of imploding in itself because it gets too big? As an example, I think the entire Arkwing thing, which you were talking about, is a great example of this structure becoming too big and things haunting the current game, because Arkwing was implemented to the open worlds as an idea of, hey, this Arkwing system, which no one really uses, let's bring them into the mindset of the player by throwing it into the open world, so that people will have a reason to pick up their Arkwings again and hopefully get back to the Arkwing system, which hasn't been properly finished. But hey, this is a way to bring that back. And then the next time they introduce the Plains of Fortuna, and they're like, hey, we have this K-Drive thing. And then now one Arkwing is way better than all the other Arkwings and all the other K-Drives to travel really far. And because you now have the problem that that you have long distances to travel, which are extremely boring, and people want to do it fast, and you implemented Arkwings because you wanted to make Arkwings relevant. And now here we go, this one Arkwing is being chosen by everyone. You gotta you gotta like find a way to fix this. Where it's like if you take away the blink from everyone's gonna be upset because they now have to travel these really long distances, which are boring as balls. Or you're gonna have to nerf it down and give it to all the Archwings, where people are like, "Well, this is worse than it was before. I don't like this." And or you're gonna have to like take it away and just be like, "Okay, no Archwings, just K drives," and people are just gonna be like, "Well, we didn't want this. Like Archwings were way better." And it's like, if Archwing just had been a stable system, maybe you wouldn't have had need to put in Archwings into the open worlds, and maybe we would have just had K drives. Or maybe we should address that the missions on an open world are way too far away from each other, and we need to like close them down so that like traveling by foot is actually meaningful. Like I think that that's one of the things where the nerf isn't the problem. It's a way bigger problem, which will take a lot more time to address. And at the same time, if you're introducing new players to Warframe, there are so many things. Just like people saying here that they like Lunaro, or people saying take Lunaro away. It's like, let's take a look at the raid system. The raid system was something which was a big problem, where like a small portion of the community played, and a lot of people just didn't even touch it. And then they took it away, and everyone got upset because that was their favorite part of the game. And like I would imagine with Lunaro or Conclave, if you were to take that away, there would also be people that say, "I'm not even touching this game anymore because they just took my thing away." And if you start taking things away that people love, it's like, well, that's not a great situation to be in. So like, I think that we do run like there's a real risk of the game becoming too big, that it might implode on itself. Don't you think?
D bites off way more than they can chew all the time. Like this is definitely, it's like the Lich system. Is you can see the original concept for it was really interesting, and like I love Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. They were great games, but I'm not sure how at home that feature is in our game as Warframe, because it's just it's tacked on. Like I understand the reasoning, because they saw this cool thing and they wanted to do it, but they didn't really consider, why does it go in? Why do you need this feature? But like maybe we should focus on the features we have and make them. Hello, sorry, cat's just come to bother me. But yeah, no, I don't know.
I personally feel that Shadows of Mordor and Shadows of War were awful games.
You didn't like them?
Not at all. I hated the clunkiness of the Nemesis system. It was so painful.
I think it was a good try.
Yeah, it was a good try, don't get me wrong. It was very interesting to see what they were trying to do, but I much prefer the Lich system.
Really?
Yeah,
that's
okay.
Wow.
Much better. Like seriously, the number of times I got fucked off with Shadows of War or Shadows of Mordor and actually threw my controller across the room, and I never have done that with any other game. Just those two, right? Because of
you came back for the sequel as well.
Well, the demo,
but
okay. I'm playing this. Oh yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I'm taking this guy down. What? Oh no, he beat me. Okay, I'll be back for you. Okay, oh, he beat me again. I'm gonna be clever. I'm gonna take my time. Cool, right? I'm beating him, and now he's like level 21. I'm gonna capture him. You can't capture him. Why? Okay, fine. I'll shame him and lower his level so that I can capture him again next time I fight. Okay, so I'm fighting him again. I'm going to capture. Oh no, some other one just turned up behind me and blew up and killed it. Giant middle finger at me. And like, I hated crap like that. Like, I hated the spontaneous bullshit that would happen. I just wanted to get on with the fucking game. And yeah, okay, Shadows of War, Shadows of Mordor, they felt very alive, but they punished you so hard. Like, they massively had you over a barrel. And
I think the way the Lich system is now, it could stand to have something similar in the sense of you have to kill underlings, and that could give you a lot. What the hell are you doing? Okay, it's scraping his arse along the floor. Yeah, no, it could stand to have like underlings that need to be taken out to then like push forward into killing the main Lich. But I just, as it stands now, I think it's shit. Like it just farming murmurs and stuff doesn't feel very engaging at all. I'd rather have the random guys coming up and blowing up my nemesis behind him, being like, "I'm your nemesis now. I killed your first guy." Sorry, I'm going to just let her out real quick.
I kind of feel that, but at the same time, like, there are so many aspects of Warframe that if players don't continue to engage with, then as a result, DE's not going to focus on them. And it's the whole reason why Arcwing turned into a mess, because there was no general consensus within the community of how to improve it, right? What would it take to round it off?
Well, I think that, like, partly I can understand where you're coming from. Well, like, I can fully understand where you're coming from, and like, partly I can agree, I think, on like, hey, if no one plays it. I think there was like this one game recently where only like it only had like an active player base of 2. Where it was like, okay, well, that was like a PvP game, and only active player base of 2 is like, okay, that's great. Yeah, like, what's the point in that at a certain point? But at the same time, it's like, you need to have an idea for what you want. You need to have an idea for what this thing is and how it works, and you need to test that idea yourself. It's like, if I post up a video, like, or a video series, like, I can start out with a video, like, I can have an idea for what I want that series to be. I can put it out, and then people can react to it and say like, hey, I didn't like the way you do your intro. I don't like the way you do this. I don't like the way you do that. And if I think it's valid criticism, I can go and change it. But I think it's a bad proposition to be like, hey, Arcwing failed because the community doesn't know what to do with it. It's like, no, it should. I think that, like, if you introduce something to the game, you should have a complete idea of what that is, and you should put it in, like, in its entirety. And if it then doesn't turn out to be well received, you can go to the community like, hey, what are the reactions? Why are people not liking it? And what can we do to improve it? And I feel that when it comes to something like Arcwing, it's like, it's just been kind of hanging there. It's like, well, like, you can try. Go ahead.
As someone that has actually followed the Arcwing topic for so long, I can tell you that no one agreed. The only voice that was heard the most about how to improve Arcwing was add 6 degrees of freedom. They eventually did it, and loads of people loved it, and loads of people hated it. It made them feel sick. It made them feel like they didn't know where they were going. They got lost easily, so on and so forth. So they put in a toggle, right? But that no one can agree on how to
But it isn't on the
Arcwing.
community to do that.
What do you mean? No.
So-
You
so-
can't
so-
fix
so-
something if you don't have an idea of what your community wants, right?
Okay.
I don't like that house. Why don't you like the house, right? Just don't like it. Yeah, but what about it don't you like? Do you not like the doors? Just don't like it. Well, do you want us to change the doors? It's like, just don't like it. It's like, is it anything to do with the doors? Don't like it. Like, I can change the windows. It's like, don't like it. Like, if people can't give a consensus of what they don't like about the feature of Warframe, they are unable to act. It's why they actually fixed so many aspects of the planes. The whole incursion thing would break far too often, and they found that having bounties out on the planes, or in Orvalis, was so much better well received. That's why they put it on the planes of Eidolon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, as you're saying, the community doesn't know what they want. But a lot of the times, community cannot agree with how to fix it.
Well, it's so, like, if you're talking to a person and you want to sell that person a house, and like, it's like, well, this is not right, and then they like, you got a big problem, because that one person is the one person you're interacting with, and you need to make that one person happy, and that's your entire goal. I feel that with Warframe, it's their goal to sell a game which a lot of people will like, and put out their idea of what they think works, and then tweak it if some things don't turn out to work that well. It's like, when it comes to something like Arcwing, it just seems like they put it out there, they made an attempt. It's like, okay, now we're waiting for you. And it's like, it's the same thing as though, like, Apple were to release their new iPhone, like, as a brand new thing, like, no one has ever done that before, and then just be like, okay, so we now have a phone with a touchscreen. If you have any more ideas, just let us know. If you can all agree on what you want on the next phone, we're going to develop more. Otherwise, we're just going to sit here. And it's like, no. It's like, if you want to, like, develop something, like, finish it off. And, like, you can tweak it, but it doesn't require everyone in the community to all play it, to all like it, to all like have a general consensus of what they want with it. Because I can perfectly well not give a shit about the Kufalit system. I don't have to. It's like the game is big enough that you don't need to, and like because of that, like you can have a lot of systems where people just won't touch it, like Conclave. I know there's a very dedicated player base that plays a lot of Conclave, but not a lot of people will. Like most of the people won't, and it's like, well, not everyone needs to play the thing, and not every player needs to have a well thought out opinion on how to improve it, because at the same time, a lot of people won't. Because like a lot of people will feel that something is wrong, but they don't know what it is, and they can't describe it because they're not game developers.
Right, but if you can't tell me what colored door you want, then
That's oversimplifying it. That's
okay, fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
that-
fine. So here's a real life situation. I'm working on a website for a client, right?
Mhm.
We give them a copy of the website, say, tell us with this feature what is fine, what is not fine, what needs to be changed, right? Just give us a whole list of all the stuff that we need to do, right? This translation's wrong. Okay, is that all? The translation's wrong. Okay, could you tell me what it should say? It's like, but the translation's wrong. Yeah, okay, give me the translation. Okay, here's the translation. Awesome, you've given me the translation. I can now fix it. Right, okay, so we're good to go live. No. The height between these 2 pixels is not good.
But okay, so
But I asked you.
You're talking about a one-on-one situation again. It's like
it's more
like
a feeling in the
okay,
Here's-
okay,
here's
hold
the
on.
thing.
No, hold on. What
No, let me
Go ahead.
finish. Like, right. The big thing is that's a one-on-one,
Mhm.
right? That's a one-on-one when I'm trying to find out what the hell they want. Try and do that with a player base of 50 million voices.
Okay, let me say this. Let's say that you have an audience of, I don't know how many people actually watch Endgame, but that will be more than 50 million. Let's say that I put out this movie called Infinity War, and then I'm like, oh God, I want it to be better received next time. All right, I'm gonna wait and see until my entire audience agrees on a consensus of what they want. And then I'm gonna make Endgame. It's like the people that made Endgame had an idea for what they wanted Endgame to be, and they have a big audience. And if people like when they make their very first like Iron Man movie, like they will listen to the people that respond to it, and they will tweak things to make other movies be better. And there were movies in the Marvel universe that failed, and there were movies that did very great, and they adjusted that to move on. But each of them were a self-contained story until like they went into like the multi-series movies. But like when you are at a scale of like an Infinity War movie production and then an Endgame movie production, you can't just be like, all right, I'm just gonna sit here and wait until everyone has a consensus of what they want and until everyone has seen it, because I'm not gonna make this movie if like you guys won't see, if like only so many million people watching, like they're like, no. You plan for both movies to be made. You have an idea of what you want for both movies. And if there's something in the first movie which people really don't like, you can adjust it in the second one. But you still have a bloody idea of what you want to do in the second one. You make the second one, you round it off. Unless something goes terribly wrong and like it's no longer financially viable to complete it. But it's like,
do you know that they weren't going to do a Thor 4?
I don't know about that.
Right, they were only going to do 3, 4. Fucking hell.
3 fours.
3.
How many fours?
3. Fuck off.
3 fours.
3
candles.
Thor movies. Right?
Mhm.
The third one was received so well they decided to do a 4.
Yeah. You can't listen to it and then I'm doing extra one. But it's like the way that you're describing it is like
The
like-
difficulty here is that you've got a complete product. Warframe is not.
well,
It's
Infinity War wasn't like the Avengers movie line wasn't a complete product until Endgame rounded it off. Until then, it was still all up in the air.
Most of Endgame was already filmed before
When they
Infinity War hit.
they started off with the very start of the series, like they all these movies moved up towards Endgame. It's like
Yeah.
they hadn't filmed everything until with Endgame.
No, but
when
they
started
but with
Iron Man.
Infinity War they did. They'd already filmed the majority.
Not when they
of-
started Infinity War. When they started filming Infinity War.
No,
it-
but when they
were filmed
released
together, but-
Infinity War, right? When the Infinity War hit the cinemas, when we could give
Okay,
feedback,
all right. Assuming that it is
Right.
Well,
how
it's
he said that it's like it's Infinity War was. I know obviously it wasn't, but assuming that was the system and it was Infinity War was filmed, and then they made a clean cut and then would film Endgame or
Yeah.
whatever, or like work out what they want for Endgame. I think that's sort of the point here, rather than
Yeah.
it's not a direct comparison, as somebody in the chat said that movie's a completely different platform. Irrelevant here. It's about the fact that D is just sort of sits there and lets people sort of develop opinions, and it's not just because of that. That's not the only reason they wait to do the content. It's because they're doing other stuff as well, which we've talked about already. Is kind of a problem for them. Sorry, go.
Is it a completely different platform, though? Because I think that a movie like Endgame is far more comparable than the one-on-one situation that Drew describes of, like, the house or, like, I'm making your website. Because, like, a game is, like, an entertainment media that you consume, but you interact with, but you still consume. And until, like, the online days where Warframe is in, you bought a complete game where it was like, it's like this movie, like, boom, this is it. But instead of a movie which you just passively watch, you can interact with it. So, like, Warframe is now not a complete game as it's being shipped, it's just being developed on, but it's still a game which is like, it's something which you consume. However, now you can talk to the producer and be like, hey, I didn't quite like the start of this movie because I had no idea what was going on. Or, like, at the start of the game, I had no, can you fix that? And it's like, now they say they can, but it is more of a, like, you're just sitting there consuming this piece of media. However, this piece of media is an interactive piece of media. I think it's more closely aligned to the movie than to the house situation.
In summary, games as a service are hard. it's there's no right answer, because it's not like we can offer it to DE, otherwise we would, and things would be solved. But unfortunately, they have to just do the best they can. I reckon. Like, it's, it frustrates me, but they try. They try with the story. They try with gameplay. It just sometimes it doesn't work out. They're particularly adventurous for their breed, so I think they run into a lot more problems than a lot of other devs do. But equally, we get a lot more kind of interesting stuff out of them as a result. But I suppose it's a kind of the price you pay for a good game is that you have to go through a lot of iterations, and like a good game in timely fashion, like timely fashion being over the course of like 5 or 6 years. 7 is it 7?
Almost.
It was
My
2012. It
account's-
was late 2012, wasn't it? It was
my account's 7 years old.
Yeah, that's horrific.
Yeah. To be honest, yeah, what you say is very accurate. I'd much rather have DE work on Warframe than follow the likes of Call of Duty or something like that. Like, Warframe offers something that very little other online games do. I mean, hell, World of Warcraft is going down the shitter. They just don't care. And it's often evident with a lot of AAA titles. The publisher doesn't care, the game developer doesn't get a chance, and the creation of love is a train wreck. Like, look at Anthem. They're
What
talking
a
about.
depressing note.
Well, no, but it's like, I'd much rather DE with Warframe than
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I'd much rather they were the disastrous mess they are than EA doing Anthem.
Yeah,
in that, like, because that was just soulless. But
they're restarting Anthem.
Sorry?
They're restarting Anthem.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. I'm aware. Sorry, I didn't hear you. But it's whether or not that's going to be fixed. Anyway,
it is something that I'm becoming more afraid of, even with this discussion that we have today, that Warframe might at some point implode in on itself, because as you describe, it's like it's a 7-year-old thing, which is a long time for a game, and I really would love for this game to continue on existing for 7 more years. But as we see with something like an Arcwing system coming to bite us back with, like, the blink thing just now, and Arcwing still kind of like haunting us with with the open worlds, they had to throw in Arcwing because people didn't play that much. So hey, let's use this transportation thing, and now let's throw it in Railjack because people maybe then it's like, how many more systems are they gonna try and like have to keep up with in order to like make them relevant and make them like worthwhile and like developing more into? And how many systems will they have to drop because they can't keep going with it? And how many of those systems were like raids, very beloved systems to people, where people are like, well, this seems like a cool branch, but apparently they don't care about this thing anymore, so why would I invest into it? And then
That's not the problem. That's not why they got rid of them.
of what?
Of raids.
Well, it was part of the problem that like they couldn't keep up with like updating and debugging older raids. It was like it was too much work to do with the updates. Like,
And there were too few people actually playing it.
yeah, because they weren't being continued on. Like, there were only 3 raids, and like they were buggy and they weren't great, but like they didn't continue on development with them because it was already this mess. So it was better to take them out and bring them back in. It's like it's the same thing when it comes to like Conclave. It's like, hey, like we're gonna try to bring like Re5 Conclave, most likely not, but like, how many more systems? Let's say that Railjack becomes another Arcwing situation where people just like don't really care. Are they gonna like try the fourth, like the next open world is gonna be, oh, you can put in your Railjack and you can put in your Arcwing and you can put in this thing, and then like you have 3 different things. Like, well, this thing is like Arcwing is no longer worth like keeping around, and then becomes like this thing which is like a bit buggy with all the new updates. Like, well, it's so much work to keep up with this. Let's just get rid of it, and then becomes like so many things that are just being added, which some people loved, are just being taken away. And then it's like, oh, so if I started out as a new player, it's like this 7 years of content with a lot of branches, which are either like trying to regrow its way back around like the main stem, which never really succeeds, or these branches which are just being like dropped off because it's not worth it, because it's just like showing things down. It's like, yeah, it becomes rather large.
In conclusion,
Yeah.
games as a service are hard.
They are.
Yeah.
But this was about story at some point, wasn't it? We were talking about story.
Bring on New War.
Yep, bring it. Give us New War. Hopefully, there's something attached to Empyrean as well. Maybe it'll be whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna win 1,000 plat off.
No. After Christmas now, please. After Christmas, so I don't have to pay up 1,000. No,
What was the bet? Please tell us.
I owe you 1,000 plat if they get it before Christmas.
Oh, I thought it was before the end of the year, which
No,
would be before
It's
Christmas
before
anyway.
Christmas, before Christmas.
Okay.
So technically, if it's between Christmas and New Year, I win.
All right.
But
Yeah, but it's not gonna happen.
I reckon it's gonna get to like the 20th, and it's just gonna go like, here you go, here it is. And I'll be like,
Yeah.
Easter 2020, get ready. Yeah. Christ, I dread to think.
Well,
And-
he'll win 1,000 plat off me then. So I mean, you know.
Yeah, but also I won't get to make a video about the game that I cover the most for how many months? Enough months?
A year.
No, Easter 2020 would be.
When was your last video?
One big one. It was on Jovian Concord, I think. But I meant
So
from now.
March.
Yes, maybe, but I'd been doing
No,
Destiny
April.
and other stuff in the meantime. But like whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not. That was my point. Was from now till Easter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
well, if they had something to talk about, then
I know, right?
Well, let's face it. We all know that the one big thing that's been stopping making them delay all the things and drop all the systems is because they've been very hard at work for over 2, almost 3 years, in getting that Hydroid Prime trailer out, and it's gonna be amazing.
Of course, yes, the elusive trailer that definitely exists.
Yep. It's where Ballas and Tilrogor have a thumb war.
Ooh. Let's see if there are a few questions, maybe 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys have any questions, because like we kind of rounded off, like in conclusion, you said it perfectly. In conclusion, live services are hard. Live games as a service are hard. So, if you guys have any questions relating to the topic or relating not to the topic, or just random questions at all, feel free to post them in chat.
Don't ask me about socks.
Ask
Zach
Sino
and
about but yeah, feel free to put them in, and we might pick them out and then just like give us some
Sorry,
quick
socks.
answers.
Yeah, Zachamus always asks me like,
Well, what color are your socks? Oh yeah, because yeah, okay.
yeah,
Yeah, Arbiters, I remember. That's embarrassing considering that's out today as well.
it's already out.
Oh, is it? Okay, right,
Yeah,
great.
it went
Oh
out
my
during-
god, were you in that mess where you just forced Xeno to improv everything?
Yeah, it's great. It's great fun. I love doing that.
Oh
So
my
there it is.
god.
You squirm.
Like last week, we already sent him for like a loop with the like whatever
Yeah, I hate
update
you.
thing.
I hate
But
you
like you
both.
just completely improv. Like you were like, here, improv the entire episode.
Oh my
We've
god.
got 2 questions.
Oh, by
one
the
of which
way,
is very serious.
I asked 15 questions during that.
Did you?
Yeah,
Well,
I
we
think we
went
chopped.
way over. That's
Yeah, we chopped a
Right.
load out. Or yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Questions.
Got a
All right.
couple.
Let's see. Casino Muckety Muck Iron. What would you do if they make Little Duck our permanent handler?
I will fly over to Canada. I will stand at the door of DE Studios, and I will cry.
Wow.
I will just
okay.
continuously cry.
Grown man bawling in the middle of the street.
No, they're in a mall. They're in a shopping mall. So I'll just continuously cry there. And then when I don't know, Scott or something needs some salt, he will just he'll just collect it from my tears.
It's
My
just this
sad,
dried husk
pathetic-
like, propped up next to the door.
Still
You're
just
like a
constantly
tourist
crying.
attraction. It's like, look at this petrified man. He's lost all the liquid in his body, but he's still
And
somehow
still crying.
Yes.
Oh god, that would be painful.
All right. Fasfuska asks, what is one of the lore inconsistencies that infuriates you the most? I think.
Oh, fucking Alan V.
No, we've already done that one. Put it back in the deck.
I wasn't going to go into detail.
I was gonna say the one that frustrates me is we've spoken about this is that like the timeline on Ballas defecting to the sentience because Margulis dies very early
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't quit the Orokin until much later because the Tenno and the war has sort of been happening throughout because I think Margulis dies before the sentience become a threat
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like that. So there's
No,
just this huge swathe of time.
Yeah, in theory, it's just before that. I don't think he's an Archimedean. He might be an Archimedean.
Parental?
Yes, yeah. I think it might just be before that she is
That's
vaporized.
implied, kind of.
But it's like you don't know for
It's like
fact.
the greatest biogeneticist of her time.
Oh no, it can't be
Eventually
though.
gone, something like I can't remember. I was trying to work out like a.
It can't be
script or something.
because the sentience are the Warframes that we have are during the old war.
The Tenno are before it.
No, they can't be. Because the second
Hang on.
generation of what? Okay.
Oh no,
that
yeah, no,
that is the
that's right,
problem.
that's right, because they
Sacrifice.
because the sentience and fade, and then you have the experiment, and then they have the Warframes, and then the Warframes are just first Dax, and then the Warframes, but then the Warframes are just guided by 10, and then the Warframes fail because they just turn rogue and they go insane, and then they use the Tenno.
Yeah.
But the Tenno themselves they became a thing in the period between when they sent off the sentience in the first place. Also, I've just realized I've completely blacked out my screen by removing this. There we go.
So the Zeraman 10-0. So when did the Zeraman 10-0?
10-0 happened between the sentience getting to coming back from Tau and being
So
created.
that couldn't have been her then.
No.
With Parentol. There you go.
Yes. No. Oh, I can't remember. It's basically there's like a decent chunk of time between Ballas, because he obviously he's the driving force behind the creation of the Warframe. Well, not the creation of the Warframes, but like using the Warframes as a puppet for the Tenno. Like that's entirely. Well, I mean, there's the implication that it's like with the Sylvana stuff in the Silver Grove, that the Warframes are being made. Or like the transference is getting used here. I think it's sort of like Ballas made the Warframes and Margulis was making transference, and then he saw what his girlfriend was working
Right.
on, and then was like, "Oh, I'll use that." 10 But I don't know. It's just there's quite a big gap between that Margulis's death and the actual defection that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my pet peeve.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite a big one. It's also not a very unimportant one. Let's see. Ring of Firetrap asks, paid story content in Warframe, would that work?
Paid story, well, like expansions.
Well, like DLC.
I guess
mean,
so.
I would
I
do
don't-
it. Well,
If
I
it was like actually good content as opposed to just sort of like a little quest here and there.
yeah,
'Cause
I
they
mean,
could-
if it was like, I don't know, depending on the price, and if it was like hours and hours,
if they were cinematic quests, I would pay for them.
yeah.
I
But
wonder.
if they were like little ones, then no.
I wonder how effective that will be, because the idea is that the paid story content would be like, okay, for those interested, we can make like an extra quest, but that will cost more man hours, that will cost an extra team to do it. So like we can do that if you give us the money, like if we can make the money out of it, like implying that DE doesn't have the money to do this. But if it were paid story content, they would. However, like, I don't know. I don't know whether an DLC would give them the money in order to do this, because I don't know how they run their company, and I don't know how much like their massively increased revenue over 6 years has changed the way they developed, how faster and how more efficiently they've been developing, and like what kind of price they would have to ask in order to fulfill the needs to make this kind of content, but still make
Actually-
it work for you for the price.
I don't think it could work, because the problem is, if you want plot-driven content, it would have to be now in the narrative. And can you just imagine buying a game or buying an expansion to a game and you couldn't play that expansion for like 50 odd hours?
Yeah.
Like,
That's a very good point. Yeah, that
Yeah,
you would have to
that
have
would-
it so you literally couldn't buy it until you'd hit a certain point in the game, and there's no way to like get around that. Really.
Yeah, like no, I don't think it could work. It's a very good idea, mine.
Who knows? Maybe with like new player experience and making it a bit more easy to.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not just Second Dream is the start of the story anymore.
Yep.
Really.
Any other questions?
I don't think so.
In which
So-
case, Ring of Fire Trap is he knows the truth. This man knows the truth. Margulis may have been saved in some way and put into Natar with continuity.
oh,
He speaks the truth.
Oh, okay. So I've had this theory since the start that like Margulis like inhibits like the helmet. Like that
Or
is the
something
way
like that, yeah.
that's
Yeah,
the way
yeah.
that she controlled Nata into thinking that she wants children of her own and care for the tenor, and then the helmet is removed and bam, she's back to her old self. Because we've seen with Umbra that we build a broken old Warframe and it inhibited the ghost of Umbra again, even though we build it new. And then like so spirits or like personalities can inhabit like objects in this world. That's been established, and Umbra has established that objects that are being inhibited can influence our way of thinking in a way that during the sacrifice we think it's our son instead of his son. So that idea of like, oh, I care for these children now, like that's something that can very easily have been placed into Nata's head and make her the Lotus. And then once the helmet is removed, once the sacrifice starts, like the helmet calls out to us to see Nata blow up Umbra. It's like, why the hell would Nata, if she's like, I'm gonna ignore you and I'm just gonna leave you forever and I don't want to talk to you, why would she want us to witness her murdering something? Like that would only make sense if it's Margulis that wants us to develop.
Yeah, sorry to hijack your little wrap up there.
No problem. That's what podcasts do. That's what happens. So yeah, I think we've come to the end of the FrameCast. I hope you guys enjoyed listening or watching the highlights, whatever you did. If you want to see this, normally we're live on Tuesday. This week we were on Thursday. But if you want to see it more, normally we're live on Tuesday on twitch.tv/MichelPostma. If you want to catch the highlights, they're going to be live on youtube.com/CasinoGalleon sometime later this week. And it's going to be like a 20-minute.
Probably next week now.
Probably next week now. But hey, 20-minute countdown version of kind of what we talked about today. And if you want to check out our esteemed guest right here, Xayl, where should they go? What would be the one place you want people to
www.youtube, no, not two dots, youtube.com/c/Xayl, I think it is. Otherwise you get some.
No, it's just Xayl.
Is it /Xayl?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I've been streaming on Twitch all this month so far. I'm planning to do it all the way to Christmas. That'll be cool if you drop by, come say hi. But
is your Twitch the same as your YouTube?
It's Xayl with an E, which I should clarify.
So, so YouTube is Xayl.
YL, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then Twitch is
Xayle. But I'm still waiting on it freeing up. But yeah, come one, come all, come see my crap.
All right, cool. Anything you wanted to add, Drew? Anything we missed? Anything you want to? Well, you can finish this episode up now. The floor is yours.
Bring on New War.
Woo!
Bring it.
Bring it. I need to win 1,000 platinum.
No, don't bring it. Bring it later. Delay it. Delay it. Press the button. I'm gonna like just sneak over into D's offices and just like stop pulling out plugs here and there. Stop screwing with their stuff.
Break into Canada.
Just start like dragging a magnet over all their drives and stuff. Oh God, can you imagine?